I'm a little bit late to the party with this review, and I need to say sorry to Sony for something. The Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6. I always get these names confused. It's the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6. It's been out for about, well, a little while now, and I have had it for a month. The reason I haven't reviewed it, there's two reasons. The first one, well, I have reviewed it, this is a review, but the reason I haven't reviewed it yet until today is because, one, it's been ridiculously busy, and this isn't a moan because I've got the best job in the world, but every brand in the universe appears to have released everything and updated everything and just gone to town at the exact same time as every other brand. For the second reason that I haven't done this yet, I had to go on holiday, and I got back from holiday 2 days ago, which could make this video very interesting. I think there's still quite a few of you out there, in fact there must be, if you've reached this video, you're thinking about buying the Sony Xperia 1 Mark 6. And ultimately I want to answer that question, is it worth £1,299? Let's get into it. It's running the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 chip, it's got 12GB of RAM, and it's got 256GB of internal memory. And that's it, you can't change the RAM, you can't change the storage, although you can change the storage actually, because, like no other phone on the market, this is why I love Sony, you can put an SD card in here, you can put a micro SD card in here and go up to 1.5 terabytes of internal storage. The battery is a 5000 mAh unit and it promises 2 days of use. The screen is 6.5 inches, it's OLED, it has a 120Hz variable refresh rate, and everything is powered by Android 14. There's 3 colours to choose from: khaki green, platinum silver and black, which is obviously this one. And as mentioned earlier, it costs £1,299 in the UK. That does put it into flagship territory as well. So this is very much an iPhone 15 Pro Max, Samsung S24 Ultra competitor. Does it live up to that promise? Let's start with the design, and like every previous Sony smartphone I've tried, like the Xperia 1 Mark 5, this feels reassuringly expensive. Sony stuff, generally speaking, I've got Sony cameras in here and other Sony things in here, generally speaking, they feel expensive enough based on the price you've paid, if that makes sense. And in this day and age, that isn't always the case. There's certain tech products where you pick them up having spent an absolute fortune on them and think, have I got value for money? The first thing you think about when you get this out the box is, that is money well spent. And no, there's no brushed aluminium, there's no polished aluminium, in fact there's no metal stuff on display. Basically whatever material this is, I should know this, I didn't look it up, but it feels very premium. It's got this kind of textured back as well, which is, it makes a nice noise. There's some ASMR for you there, why not? I do like the black version, by the way, but I have seen the khaki green version, which is very nice as well. Inadvertently, I tested the durability of this in Mallorca last week, which is where we went on holiday. Basically, it was on a table and I went to reach for my drink, probably was a beer, of course, and I just knocked it. I just sent the Xperia 1 Mark 6 flying, and it fell off a table about this height, basically, onto a ceramic floor, I think it was. It was a very hard floor. Well, it didn't come off completely unscathed, so there are a couple of marks. This is, sorry Sony, this is my apology for slightly damaging the review unit. However, they're very minor, actually, and the display, more importantly, is completely brand new. There's no scratch, there's no chip, nothing at all. That was what I was primarily worried about. Phones don't always come off very well these days, and again it comes back to this lack of polished sides and exposed aluminium and stuff. Let's move on to the display, and it is fantastic. This is a lovely smartphone screen, which isn't surprising. This is Sony, that Sony knows what they're doing when it comes to screen technology. On that front, they have borrowed some of the tech from the Bravia TV range and squeezed it into here. I won't go into what it is because I don't fully understand it, and that is not what this channel's about. If you know this channel, we don't go into very, very deep specs. If you have a Bravia TV at home and you go away somewhere and you're watching stuff on the plane on your Xperia 1 Mark 6, you know you're getting a very similar image. It's an OLED panel as well, so that, you know, the blacks are nice and deep as well. It's sharp, incredibly sharp. It's very fast because of that 120Hz refresh rate. You can kind of say that you've got a Bravia TV in your pocket. Kinda. So design is great, the display is fantastic, it's robust. What else? Oh, it's got a shutter button. So I love this about Sony. Sony, please never stop doing this. On these Xperia phones, we have that button there. That's a shutter button, just like these cameras here, which have shutter buttons, you know, when you take photos. You have that on this phone, and it has a half press, so you half press it to focus and then fully press to take the photo. Don't always find myself using it, to be honest, but it does remind me that this phone is based around photography. That's one of its main strengths. Lastly, performance. This is a very fast phone. It's using the latest Snapdragon chip, and it feels like it. It's very zippy and snappy in everyday use. That's all I can say about performance. I don't do benchmarks, as you may or may not know. You're not going to get this out of the box, set it up and think, ooh, it's a bit sluggish. You're going to think it's really fast, because every modern flagship smartphone is fast these days. But there is something that needs to set this phone apart, and that is photography. So let's get onto the camera system. On the back of this phone, we have a 52 megapixel main camera which shoots 48 megapixel images and has a focal length of 24 millimeters. There's a 12 megapixel zoom with a focal length of 85 to 170 millimeters and a 12 megapixel wide angle with a 16 millimeter focal length. So when I was given this phone about a month ago, Sony took us to a very posh Michelin-starred restaurant in Soho. You don't normally hear those motorbikes, but I'm keeping that one in. As I was saying, when I was given this about a month ago, we were taken to a very posh restaurant in Soho in London called Solar, if you're interested. We were given the task of taking photos of the food and of a professional model with the help of a professional photographer with this phone. So if there's any setting, any subject and any guidance that is going to really put this to task when it comes to the camera system, it was that day. Now for the purpose of this review, all of these photos are taken in JPEG. There's no edits whatsoever. They're completely straight out of the camera. You can shoot in RAW if you want to. I just wanted to see what these photos are like if you just use it as a point and shoot, because I still think most people do that with these cameras. Sony has made one big change this year, which is that we only have one camera app this time. So last time there were two camera apps, which got a bit confusing. It's lovely that they've consolidated everything into this one camera app, and I think this camera takes some fantastic photos. The portrait mode, which is where you get that lovely bokeh, that lovely background blur, if you use that in conjunction with the zoom lens, I think you get some fantastic images. They're very natural. The macro mode is fantastic as well. This was a very good test for that particular setting because, well, this food just looks beautiful if you shoot it correctly, and you can do that if you turn on the manual focusing. So on this phone you can turn on focus peaking, so you can see what's in focus via highlighted colors on the display, and then you can use a manual slider to choose the focus point. The best test for this was focusing on the street reflection in the model's eye, which you can see here. I think I did a fairly good job of it, and again, this was relatively easy because I could get nice and close, but also use that slider to pick out the focus point. As you'd guess, I did take this to Mallorca as well and take some holiday snaps, which I'm happy to share with you here. Again, this was a very harsh lighting setup. It's dealt with it fantastically. The portraits I got from this are lovely as well, and it was just a lovely camera to have with me. As for the video mode, I'll show you some very quick video that I've shot in the studio, and well, let's try out the front-facing camera as well. So this is the front-facing camera on the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI. I've not done anything to it at all. It's 4K 24 frames a second. This one does go up to 60 frames a second. The rear camera goes up to 120 frames per second. Let me walk around a little bit as well so you can get a feel for going into dark and light areas. This is standard stabilization as well. I haven't changed that. As always, guys, let me know down in the comments what you think about the video. And, well, it's time for my inevitable conclusion about the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI. Is the Sony Xperia 1 Mark VI worth £1,299? Yes. And the reason I say yes is because it's a flagship phone, and that is what you pay for a flagship phone these days. This looks like a flagship, it feels like a flagship, it's robust enough to be a flagship, it's fast enough to be a flagship, and it has a camera system which is absolutely flagship worthy. I think it's for two different sets of people. The first set is Sony people. I definitely am. I love Sony gear, I can't get enough of it, and if that's you and you need a new smartphone, the second set of people is people who are fed up with the norms of flagship smartphones. So if you're fed up of your Samsungs, your Apples, etc., remember, you get a shutter button with this. You can put an SD card in it. I completely forgot. It's got a headphone jack. Please, Sony, do not remove this stuff. If you're in the market for a new phone, and if you're a Sony person or you just want something different, I really recommend the Xperia 1 Mark VI. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a quick thumbs up, guys. It makes a massive difference to this channel, and if you haven't subscribed yet, you know what to do. And I might as well keep asking you to do things. Keep watching for a link to another video I think you'll find very interesting.